students from Pandit Deendayal Petroleum University currently in final year pursuing BTech in Petroleum Engineering. This video is a part of our assignment in City Gas Distribution subject. It is prepared by us on the topic ERDMP for Pipeline module. I am Kavya Patel and I would like to start by giving a brief introduction about the topic. ERDMP stands for Emergency Response and Disaster Management Plan. It is developed to mitigate any possible disaster and prevent any harm to humans and property. The plan identifies any major hazards and classifies the emergencies on the basis of its seriousness. And this is done by taking inputs from quantitative risk assessment report. For effective response and recovery efforts, an emergency management structure is developed. It includes resources management, that is facilities like emergency control center, escape routes, medical facilities must be available. An incident management system includes emergency notification to the employees, control of emergencies, etc. It clarifies the roles of site controller, incident controller, and other people who play key roles in such emergencies. It also explains the procedures to handle certain emergencies like bomb threat, confined space rescue, chemical spill, and other such incidents. The ERDMP for a company is prepared as per the guidelines from Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board and as per Codes of Practices for ERDMP Regulations 2010. The objective of this plan are to prevent both on-site and off-site casualties, to prevent any damage to property, machinery, or environment, to be prepared for any emergency, to provide any incident command system, field supervision, and unified command, to ensure that an orderly and timely decision is made and proper response process is carried out, and to maintain good public relations by preventing any damage. The Emergency Response and Disaster Management Plan for any company should include all these aspects. We will be discussing each of these points in this video. First point is the classification of emergencies. There are three levels of emergencies as per the guidelines by PNGRB. Level 1 emergencies include those incidents which can be effectively managed and contained within the site, location, or installation. These emergencies do not have any impact outside the site. For example, if there is any minor leakage through a very small hole in a pipeline, or a minor fire is caused by a small hole, these fall under the category of Level 1 emergencies. Level 2 emergencies cannot be managed safely or contained at the location, and hence it can have a harmful effect on the environment, industrial assets, or the population. For example, if the leakage of gas from pipeline is through a hole diameter between 20 to 50 millimeters, it is called Level 2 emergency. In this type, there is also a possibility of a mutual aid partner being involved. Level 1 and Level 2 are called on-site emergencies and Level 3 is called off-site emergency. Level 3 emergencies include incidents that could be catastrophic and can affect the population, property, and environment inside and outside the location. This is controlled by the district administration, but the unit is responsible for management of emergency. For example, leakage of natural gas from pipelines through 20% CSA, that is curved surface area of pipeline, or if fire is caused due to this kind of leakage, these are Level 3 emergencies as they can cause severe damage to the surroundings. All the codes and regulations in ERDMP must be implemented as per the implementation periods given here. For example, both on-site and off-site emergency plans must be implemented within 3 months. Resources must be in position within 6 months, but long delivery items shall be tied up with mutual aid up to 12 months. Third-party certification of ERDMP must be acquired in a year. Testing and mock drills for on-site location must be implemented in 3 months, and for off-site location, they should be completed within a year. Third point is consequences of default or non-compliance. To ensure that all the regulations are being followed and implemented, mock drills and safety audits must be conducted during construction, commissioning, and operation phase. If there is any outsider visiting the plant, He should be made aware of all the do's and don'ts regarding safety and emergencies. PNGRB will monitor the compliance of ERDMP, technical standards and other specifications. If any entity fails to achieve these standards, they are liable to certain penal provisions. If any mutual aid association does not respond on the request of assistance, they will attract penalty. For first default in response, they will have to give a written explanation to the affected mutual aid members. For second and successive failures, they will have to pay the double of the amount of expenses incurred by the affected mutual aid members.
Hello everyone, this is Yogini Lakhani and today I'll be presenting the topic of statutory requirements and pre-emergency planning of pipeline laying. During pipeline installation, certain rules and regulations drafted by PNGRB under Schedule 2 of T4S document are to be followed by the company. These rules, regulations and acts are not just mandatory for pipeline laying but are applicable to ensure a healthy and safe environment to the workers as well. However, these rules are not intended to override any of the statutory bodies or any other guidelines issued by the central government in respect to the formulation of ERDMP. These rules can be amended with time to time. The rules includes the Environment Protection Act, the Factories Act, the Motor Vehicles Act, the Petroleum Act, the National Environment Tribunal Act, and the Explosive Act. These all acts not just ensure the healthy environment for the workers, but also takes into consideration the environmental hazards posted by the installation of pipelines. These includes the safety of motor vehicles and the substances which are disposed of during pipeline installation.
Moving on to the pre-emergency planning. The pre-emergency planning comprises of hazard identification, risk analysis and risk assessment, causes of disaster, and lastly, the consequences. The first step towards ERDMP shall be to identify the potential on-site and off-site hazards. These hazards include gas leaks, fire, explosion, equipment failure, pipeline ruptures, etc. The hazard identification includes the information on toxicology, physical and chemical properties of the substance. These are handed in the format of material safety data sheet. The identification of potential impact on air quality, water quality, flora and fauna and animal health are also considered. Identification of installation hazards also includes the natural perils such as flood, earthquake, cyclones, landslides, etc. Lastly, the checkpoints for hazard identification are to be given in checklist 1. Here is the checklist for hazard identification. It includes the type of hazards, the vulnerability analysis, the risk reduction measures, and the hazard studies. Moving on, types of hazards are also to be formulated during pipeline laying. The types of hazards for pipeline are followed: structural hazard, which includes the equipment failure, pipeline ruptures, corrosion, or any valve failure. This structural hazards leads to data hazard such as gas leaks, volumes of oil spilled into the reservoirs or into the water bodies. This can also in turn turn into the branch hazard such as the disruption of the pipeline network in the total area. Moving on to the next step of ERDMP, that is risk analysis and risk assessment for each hazard. The basic procedure is as follows. The identification of potential failures. This can help us to calculate the quantity released, for example, the gas released due to gas leaks or the corrosion. This also includes the frequency of the failure, that is, how many times in a year there can be the frequency of failure in a particular pipeline. Both these points help us to get the evaluation of the consequences due to these failures. These consequences evaluation helps to get us identify the zone of important risk. This zone can be very helpful during pipeline laying or monitoring. Next, After assessing the risk, the maximum tolerable condition must be defined, above which the risk shall be regarded as intolerable. Lastly, the risk should also be made as low as reasonably practicable and least impacting the neighborhood. A quantitative determination of risk involves three major steps. IRPA, individual risk per annum. These steps are as follows: broadly acceptable region, the tolerable region, and the intolerable region. Here, a risk of 10 per million per year, that is 10 raised to minus 5 per year, effectively means that any person standing at a point of this level of risk would have 1 in 10,000 chances of being fatally injured per year. Moving on to the causes of disaster. The common causes for the above events are tabulated below for the reference. The man-made hazards, the natural calamities, and the extraneous. The man-made includes the fire, explosion, design deficiency, unsafe acts, inadequate maintenance, or human errors. The natural calamities includes the flood, earthquake, cyclones, excessive rains, or tsunamis. Extraneous causes of disaster includes terrorism, mob attack, civil disorder, abduction, or any war or missiles. Here is a representation of pipeline causes of disasters. The major pipelines which are the major disasters caused in pipelines are due to the excavation damages and the corrosion. However, human error also leads to the 5% of the disasters during pipeline laying and monitoring. Lastly, the consequences. The consequences of any incident may be confined within the premises or may spill offside, triggering the cascading effects. Here is a consequence of a pipeline failure in a neighborhood which resulted into explosion and harming the environment. However, the pipeline should be prevented or managed to avoid any major emergencies.
Hello, myself Sajan Khatara. I am going to explain emergency mitigation measures. So these are some incident preventing measures and procedures. First, we have to consider the HSE policy, which is known as the Health, Safety and Environment Policy. Then there should be proper layout and inter-facility distances in which the layout should not have any crisscross movement of men and materials. Then they should create safety committees with fair participation of union leaders and workers. Then safety audits and inspections shall be carried out with the help of prescribed checklists. Then in order to mitigate the emergencies, we have to install the early warning alarm system in the installation. Then there should be work permit system including confined space and entry permit. And also we have to ensure that there are inbuilt safety interlock system in design such as SRVs, safety relief valves, then TSVs, thermal safety valves, then NRVs, non-returning valves, and ROVs, remote operated valves. Then there should be drills conducted for visitors including assembly procedures and escape route, then do's and don'ts written instruction before entry, etc. Then also the presence of fire protection and HSE management system should be there. All standby equipment should be tried and operated periodically and recorded. Now, emergency preparedness measures. So these are some emergency drills and mock exercises which we have to conduct at regular intervals to overcome the emergency if any will be. First is each side should hold drills on the night shifts, change shifts as well as during the day. Then drills should be present a variety of emergency scenarios, which means these exercises should attempt to simulate as closely as possible a fire, explosion or toxic agent release, etc. Then the warning system, first aid, evacuation procedures and definitive treatment procedures should all be tested periodically. Then some of the drills should also include the participation of outside groups and agencies such as police, fire companies, ambulance service, civil defense organizations and mutual aid groups Then testing and mock drills for on-site emergency plan shall be carried out once in 3 months, and for off-site emergency it should be around 12 months. Then these mock drills will enable the unit or location to assess the capability of the individual and also the performance of as a group. Then each mock drill should be recorded with observations and deficiencies to be rectified within 24 hours. Then now emergency response procedures and measures, in which first one is zoning and maps. First one is in which the zones and maps shall be prepared highlighting the incident prone areas of the unit, so that in case of an emergency it serves as a basis for taking the action. Then this will also indicate the size of area within which human life is seriously endangered by the consequences of incident. Then the location of assembly points and emergency control rooms. Then also 24 wind directions to facilitate easy access in case of emergencies. Then we can use anemometer to record the wind speed and direction, and also then declaration of off-site emergencies should be immediately communicated to DDMA, which is known as District Disaster Management Authority. Then second one is layout or flow diagram. So there are several different activities such as product lines, filling system, emergency shutdown system, isolation valves, etc., which all should be detailed out in detailed layout and flow diagram. Then third one is manpower data, in which the details of manpower deputed on shift basis should be given in order to assess the requirement in case of an emergency. So now emergency organization and responsibilities. So there are several responsibilities for decision making which shall be clearly shown in an emergency organization chart, which will be explained by my friend in the next slide. So now the plan shall identify each responder's position, mission, duties and reporting relationship. So overall objectives of an emergency control organization shall be to promptly control problems as whichever will be developed at the scene, then to prevent or limit the impact on other areas and also on the offsite, and to provide emergency personnel which will be selecting them for duties compatible with their normal work functions wherever feasible. Then employees must assume additional responsibilities as per laid down procedure of ERDMP whenever an emergency alarm sounds. So in setting up the organization, the need for round-the-clock coverage shall be essential, which means if responsible personnel has not been arrived at the site of emergency, then the shift personnel must be prepared to take charge of the emergency control functions or emergency shutdown of system if need be. Thank you.
So I am Kapuriya, and today I am starting with an organization chart. So this is the typical chart which is followed by the company to control an emergency. Now first let me make you clear with the arrows. So this dark black line arrow indicates level 1 emergency. The 2-line arrow indicates level 2 emergency, and dotted line arrow indicates level 3 emergency. As we know that level 1 emergency can be controlled by the on-site resources and services. So site incident controller is the responsible to control such emergency, and which involves support services, administration and communication coordinator, fire safety, fire team and HSE coordinator, operational team, technical team and etc. Now as we know that level 2 emergency cannot be controlled by the on-site resources and services, so we'll have to call the outside services. So chief incident controller and site incident controller both are responsible for to control such emergency, and there should be proper communication between chief and site incident controller. And chief incident controller must be able to contact police services, municipal transport rescue and team, affected stakeholder and government authorities, medical services and ambulance, fire bridge services as quickly as possible. Now as we know that level 3 emergency is a type of emergency which is caused by the outside impact. So the off-site incident controller or district authority is responsible to control such emergency, and there must be proper communication between the off-site incident controller and chief incident controller. Now coming to the siren codes. The emergency siren should be located suitably to cover the whole area with the operational control within the installation. This should be tested at least once in a week to keep them in working condition. Now there are different siren codes for different type of emergency. Like for emergency level 1, wailing siren for 2 minutes, emergency level 2 and 3, same type of siren as in case of level 1 and 2, but the same will be sounded for 3 times at the interval of 1 minute. If all the things are clear, means all clear, then straight run siren for 2 minutes. And for test, straight run siren for 2 minutes at frequency at least once a week. Now coming to the assembly points, there should be pre-designated areas in safe zone as per quantitative risk assessment, where the personnel like workover staff, contractor, workers not involved in the emergency operation shall assemble in case of an emergency. Now there should be a proper direction or direction board should be there to direct all the workers towards the assembly point. Now depending on the location of emergency, the assembly point can vary. The assembly point should be clearly marked with the directional display board along the route. During an emergency, pre-designated person would take charge of this point and take the roll call of the people reporting. Means after once the siren has been sounded, all will gather to the assembly point, and one pre-designated person will take the attendance of all of this, and ensure that all workers have came to assembly point. Now communication and head count facility at assembly points and personnel to control the movement of assembled employees should be there. And now my friend will continue.
So after the infrastructure requirement, we have to understand about the declaration of on-site and off-site emergency. So first we understand what is the on-site emergency. If an accident takes place in a factory, its effects are confined to the factory premises, involving only the person working in the factory and property inside the factory. It is called as an on-site emergency. If I am talking about off-site emergency, if the accident is such that its effects inside the factory are uncontrollable and it spread outside the premises, it is called as a off-site emergency. So during the emergency we take certain step, and if emergency start as a small incident and which may become a major incident with the time, and at the initial stage the emergency organization charts will be put into the action. This is the first step. If the incident goes beyond the control, the on-site emergency plan will be actuated by the chief incident controller at the appropriate stage as considered necessary. When the emergency becomes catastrophic and evacuation beyond the plant premises is considered necessary by the chief incident controller, the situation will be handed over to district authority for implementing the off-site emergency plan. In addition to preparation of on-site emergency plan, some furnishing relevant information to the district authority for the preparation of off-site emergency plan. And after we have to understand about the resource for controlling emergency, and resource for controlling emergency, it is a very important aspect, so that installation has to provide a number of system and resource based on the risk level. Second point is for emergency control, organization provide facility within the installation in plant. For example, fire and gas detection system, fire and fighting system, ambulance facility, communication facility, emergency shutdown system. These are all required facility in the plant. So another third point say that whatever resource facility provide is as per the relevant code and standard. So this section shall also identify sources of the local assistance, including telephone number and names of contact. For example, For example, in fire department, hospitals, police, mutual aid organization, helicopter and air service, etc. In the fourth point, the installation shall also determine type of resource such as equipment, personnel, technology, expertise, etc. provided by the government. And last point said that the external and internal resource for combating emergency, for example, trained manpower, vehicle available, etc. These are the resource for controlling emergency.
In a ERDMP, the information like population around a 5 km radius of a pipeline laying down, number of a school, number of a hospital, and the details of the hospital and the school, types of the flora and fauna near the 5 km radius of a pipeline laying down is included. This demographic information is required because if any accident occur, so evacuation of the public and the evacuation of the fauna should be carried out in a proper planned manner. So if any accident occur, so medical facilities near the pipeline laying down it should included, in which we are included the number of a first aid center and the facilities available at the first aid center, details of the trained person in a first aid center, details of the hospital near the site, the facilities available at the hospital, and the antidotes and the emergency medicine available at the hospital, and the details of the specialist doctor present in the town also included in a ERDMP plan. So if any accident occur, so evacuation of the personnel should be carried out in a planned manner. So evacuation should be carried out in perpendicular to wind or opposite direction to wind. Suppose pipeline is flowing, so if any leakage occur, so the natural gas is flowing in a direction of a wind and accumulated there, so the evacuation should be perpendicular or opposite direction to wind. This chart or this table is represent the maximum evacuation distance in a feet from the pipeline. Suppose our pipeline size is a 16-inch and the pressure in the pipeline is 1000 psi, so maximum evacuation distance in a feet is 1154 feet, and this distance should be only for a natural gas. It is not applicable for the butane, propane or other liquids.
Hello, myself Jinay Maheshwari. Today I will talk about information to public. This come under regulation 21 of ERDMP regulation, in which we will talk about during any emergency the public there or any nearby public is informed, and they are also ensured to have a precautionary measures during this type of emergency. For that, awareness camp is also be conducted regularly so that the people get aware about the emergency natures. And also display boards are also having do's and don't during any this type of emergency, and which are located outside the gate or neighboring areas or any habitat areas where the immediate vicinity can happen. This use of do's and don't will be prepared by the district crisis management group. Now we will see about that assessing the situation at a site or to aware the emergency to the people. Now whoever will notice any kind of situation will immediately inform to the control room or nearest control room or a supervisor by a means of telephone or nearby alarm point or personally. The officer of a plant control room, after seeing the magnitude of a situation, will blow the siren. Accordingly, the wailing siren for 2 minutes will be blown and emergency will be controlled by the team as per organogram. Then also, if the firefighter crew is also not capable of controlling the any kind of situation after the assessing after the incident, controller plant will declare the disaster, that is level 3 disaster. Plant control room operator will blow 3 wailing sirens of 2 minutes each with a time lag of 1 minute between each siren to make the disaster known to the key personnel and the employees of a plant as well. The information about the disaster to key personnel will also be given on a telephone by station control room. Now we will talk about how to report the incident. All the incident covered under level 1 shall be maintained by the entity for the inspection, and the level 2 and level 3 shall be reported on to the board in a format and placed at a schedule 6, including near miss incident. The above report should be submitted within the 48 hours after the occurrence of any kind of incident or major incident. Investigation report of all the major incident shall be submitted to a board. An incident shall be treated as a major if any kind of following like this kind of thing occurs, like fire for more than 15 minutes, explosion or kind of blowout, like a fatal incident, that loss above rupees 10 lakh, or a cumulative man hour lost more than 500 hours, or plant shutdown outage due to an incident, or any kind of level 3 incident. Now we will see that what type of format of incident. Now this is the incident reporting format that level 2 and level 3 should be report in this type of form, where you can see that all the things should be filled accordingly, like organization names, that sector, that location, incident or date of incident, if it is minor or major, time of incident, that fire or this kind of incident, what type of incident is there, is it any loss of life or injury or explosion or blowout, any kind of this. Then all these details we have to fill, or a supervisor there will fill to an entity or organization in this particular format. This is also filled according to some guidelines.
Hello, I'm Sahil Maheriya, roll number 17 BP054. I'm gonna talk about emergency recovery procedure and ERDMP for tank trucks and pipeline carrying petroleum products. So here is the emergency recovery procedure. Its main objective is to ensure that you can respond to a disaster or any emergency. These are the first steps in the disaster recovery plan. First is create a disaster recovery team. The team will be responsible for developing, implementing, maintaining the DRP, and the DRP should identify who should be contacted in the event of disaster or emergency. Second is identify and assess disaster risk. This step include items related to natural disaster, man-made emergencies, and technology related to incidents. Third is determine critical application documents and resources. It means the plan should focus on short-term survivability, such as generating cash flow and revenues, rather than on a long-term solution of restoring the organization's full functioning capacity. Fourth is specific backup and off-site storage procedure. This procedure should identify what to backup, by whom, how to perform the backup, location of backup, and how frequently backup should occur. Fifth is test and maintain the DRP. Disaster recovery planning is a continual process as the risk of disaster and emergencies are always changing. It is recommended that the organization routinely tests the DRP. Now the next slide is on ERDMP for tank trucks and pipeline carrying petroleum products. The road transport of petroleum product needs special attention, and it requires a comprehensive emergency management plan with the industry as well as with other related authorities all along the routes. Here is the external agencies that are associated with it. First is fire brigade, rushes fire tender to the incident site with all necessary equipment, prepare a contingency plan for removal of tank trucks, dispersal of weapons by water spray, save human lives and salvage material from incident affected truck, liaise with the fire brigade in the adjoining town for additional help if necessary. Second is police, stop the traffic from both the ends of the road, warn the people living in the adjacent area for stopping fire and smoking, contact nearest district police headquarters and giving the situation report, evacuate personnel from that area, extend help in removal of injured personnel to the nearest first aid center or hospital. The next slide is pipelines, ERDMP for pipelines carrying petroleum products. First is creation and maintaining the administrative framework for a safe environmentally sound transportation infrastructure. The pipeline operator has a primary responsibility for the safety of the system and prevent incidents. Land use planning consideration will be taken into account both in the routing of new pipelines and in decision concerning proposal for new developments in the vicinity of the existing pipelines. Risk assessment method should be used in evaluating pipeline integrity and impact on human health and the environment. Pipelines shall be designed, constructed and operated in accordance with recognized national and international code and guidelines notified by the board. Design and stress factor have also have strong impact on the safety of pipelines. The pipeline will be inspected and maintained regularly. Only reliable trained staff of qualified contractor may carry over maintenance work on a pipeline.
In this section, we'll see how the ERDMP is integrated into the NDMA, which is the National Disaster Management Authority. The NDMA in 2005 passed the NDMP Act, which is the National Disaster Management Plan Act. The main motive of this act was to build a safer and more disaster resilient India by not only preparing for the after effects of a disaster, but also to prevent the whole thing from even happening in the first place. This can only be achieved by establishing disaster management authorities on state and district levels as well, which was imposed under the NDMP Act, with each state disaster management authority headed by the Chief Minister of the state and each district disaster management authority headed by the district collector. Additionally, to lay a greater emphasis on disaster management and to make the general public more aware of it, plenty of research institutions and training programs have also been developed. All this will ultimately build a safer and more disaster resilient India, and it's imperative that the community, government and NGOs all work together to achieve this collective goal. Lastly, we'll look at the security aspect of it. In this day and age, a bomb threat is very real and has to be considered when developing a disaster management plan. Each installation must have an action plan ready in case of such a threat. Let us look into the basic blueprint of a bomb threat action plan. So here we have an action plan. So firstly, when somebody receives a bomb threat, they must try not to panic. Panicking will only make things worse. They are to fill up the bomb threat information form and hand it over to the coordinator of the bomb threat assessment committee. It is then the duty of the coordinator to alert the authorities, the police control room, the bomb squad, the fire station, and etc. After that, the BTAC must then evaluate the authenticity of the bomb threat and the severity of the situation with the information they have. If the threat is significant enough, then the entire area must be evacuated. Otherwise, only the danger zones are evacuated. It is important that this evacuation is done in an orderly fashion. Once that's done, a search team is dispatched to search for the bomb, and after the bomb is located, it is to be defused and disposed of, following which the area can be declared safe. The re-entry of employees is then ordered and normal activities are resumed. These are the sources that we've referred to for the making of this presentation, and that brings us to the end of it.